Um, we are members of the Group-3 of batch 2017, and as a part of our global marketing module, here we are doing this presentation to introduce everyone to this HBR case study that was conducted. So today we are going to discuss about how global companies win out. Now, international competition, this is what most of the industrialized countries are obsessed with. And amidst all of these, there are quite a few companies that have made steady progress against outside competition. Now, the key to their success was that they relied mainly on global strategies. So let us now see what a global strategy is and how it differs from the domestic competition. Now, when a company follows global strategies, they think of the world as one market instead of a collection of national markets. This at times requires serious strategic decisions. Firms may at times have to accept projects with very low return on investment, expecting a competitive payoff at a later stage. They sometimes have to formulate long-term strategies for the entire firm and then look at the individual strategies of local subsidiaries accordingly. Now, in contrast, in a multi-domestic market, individual subsidiaries would compete independently in different domestic markets. Now, when you look at global companies again, they would try to control their leverage points from economies of scale to the competitor's source of cash flow as well. They may lower the prices of certain products in key markets, thereby making the competitor's response more expensive and also more difficult. Now, let us try to see which companies should not go global. Well, going global can be very rewarding, and so can be the risks involved as well. So firms need to make major changes to their operations and operational policies basically when going global. Sometimes they may have to go ahead with projects with zero return on investment, as I mentioned earlier, or perhaps even negative return on investments, considering the global strategy. Then products may have to be underpriced deliberately in certain markets just to catch the market over their competitors. Then they may also have to view country by country market positions and consider them as interdependent and not independent. Then operate production facilities at times in both high cost and low labor cost countries, which is again off the norm a bit. Now, if a firm has a product portfolio that differs greatly among country markets and also have a very high transportation cost to transport their products to the end user, then or perhaps a respective industry lacks sufficient economies of scale. Now, if you're a firm of this nature, perhaps you're better off being a multi-domestic rather than trying to go global. Before entering the global arena, one must also first see if the company that you're talking about, the industry of the company that they are looking at, has the right characteristics that favor the global competitor. To win in form of global competition, one must also have sufficient worldwide volume, either in terms of low unit cost or reputation. Now, when you talk of, or let me put it this way, there's a main risk in a firm trying to go global. Since there's no guarantee that the business would become global, the firm must be willing to absorb the heavy investment that the global competition requires. And of course, when you look at, or let us think of a company that is currently not global. Now, they are planning to go global. Now, there are a couple of questions that we need to ask how. So let us see what these questions are. Like, first of all, let me say, what kind of strategic innovation is required to trigger the global competition? This is one of the very important things that a company needs to think of. Then, secondly, is your firm currently in the best position among all its competitors to establish and defend the advantages of global strategy? Yes, you need to look at that. Then thirdly, what kind of resources and for how long a period would they have to be used in order to establish the expected leading position? Yeah, so these are questions that a company that's currently not global and planning to go global needs to look at. So as I mentioned earlier, going global has its own pros and cons. And now let me hand over to my colleague, Mr. Hamzat, to take you further along our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tushara. Caterpillar had become a major American manufacturer of earth-moving, construction, agriculture, and material handling equipment. Caterpillar follows a strong and well-developed marketing plan and has strategic set of actions to lead the way and to continue being the market leader. It has recently focused on requirement of infrastructure to grab the maximum revenue in emerging markets. The company has focused in important regions like China, as it has a huge wealth growth rate and has a capacity for more energy hubs. Since Caterpillar follows a global strategy, all parts that are manufactured worldwide include central design control, ensures that these parts are interchangeable and that they will fit on any appropriate Caterpillar, regardless of its country of origin. This is a global strategy because each country's operation is viewed as part of a single worldwide plan. By utilizing a globalized strategy, Caterpillar became a direct participant in local economies and the company achieved lower cost without sacrificing local product flexibility. With their parts being interchangeable, Caterpillar has been able to achieve economies of scale. Caterpillar has also been able to exploit both its worldwide sales volume and its existing market parts revenues. Competitors were unable to match its cost of profit and therefore could not compete with Caterpillar in the same level. Similarly, Korean automobile giant SsangYong, who is the fourth largest South Korean based automobile manufacturer and subsidiary of Indian international automotive company Mahindra & Mahindra Limited, tied up with Micro Cars Limited in 2008 and began assembling SUVs in Sri Lanka for the first time with a local value addition. In terms of the local requirement, the company would develop a low-cost manufacturing and assembly operations that could produce high-quality vehicles utilizing the resources and labor forces of Sri Lanka. Today, Micro Cars Limited remains the only national car manufacturer assembling a full range of vehicles from compact cars and vans to luxury SUVs, buses and prime movers. While using a globalized strategy has a lot of benefits and has helped SsangYong become one of a leading firm in automobile industry. The best approach is usually neither purely domestic nor purely global, but a combination of both. This becomes the most apparent when we see the shortcomings of single-mindedly pursuing international strategy based on either global integrations alone or domestic adaptations alone. Thank you very much. Over to Mr. Harshana.
Thanks, Hamza. Let's see how Ericsson, being one of the world's largest telecommunications supplier, got evolved in the case of global win-out strategy. LM Ericsson of Sweden has become a successful global competitor by developing and exploiting a technological niche in the local market, then reach into the global market. Sweden being a small country where the market was relatively small, but they created a niche for electronic switching technology which later expanded into the international market. Let's see how Ericsson touched the global market starting from the local market development. In the early 1960s, telecommunication market expansion into the global was hard and stringent. Due to the uniqueness of the switching system, products got adhered in line with the local market demand. This was due to each country's telephone system was unique. In the late 1960s, major international telecommunication companies, including Ericsson, switched into the less developed countries to take not only the advantage of cheap labor, but also to respond to the desire of the government telephone companies to source locally. While Ericsson found an opportunity to supply their local produce switching system into other European small markets who were using same switching system made by Ericsson. This was due to those small European markets were lagging local suppliers to fulfill their market demand. The telecommunication industry became global in the 1970s when electronic switching technology became popular, where Ericsson's position in the market was threatened by cost structure of electronic switching technology. As software cost was 60% of total cost, while 55% of hardware cost was on modern electronic components, and the production of those components was highly scale sensitive. In the meantime, the initial research and development investment required to develop a system was more than $100 million, which major international companies had amortized more easily than Ericsson. Moreover, small electronic switching system had required a large fixed cost software investment, which made the new technology expensive for the companies making smaller telephone system like Ericsson. Ericsson was able to quickly understand the new electronic technology would be adapted to small system and the possible risk of losing its position in smaller due to the new global competition. So what was the turning point of the Ericsson is that they were able to respond this challenge with the strategic innovation step by introducing a modular technology to small telephone system. The company developed a series of modular software packages in line with the market requirement and at a reasonable cost. With the move of new technology and amortized development costs, Ericsson was able to compete globally with small switching systems. In the wake of Ericsson modular technology, they were able to gain major market share in small telephone system as well as set up an entry barrier to their competitors in the global market. Beyond the Ericsson case, when we take another example similar to the Ericsson modular technology, we can introduce Oracle, who is one of the world's leading enterprise software companies. Oracle has built a sophisticated portfolio of business software applications such as famous customer relationship management CRM, enterprise resource planning ERP, financial management, human capital management, supply chain management and transport management, etc., which followed step-by-step modular technology system. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nyanendra.
Thank you, Harsha, for handing over the presentation. Let's look at how these companies are using this different method of manufacturing process layouts for the purpose of developing a global branding around the world. So one of the good things we have to see, there are a lot of companies involved in centralized manufacturing production layout. Let's look at first what is centralized manufacturing production layout. One of the good examples is Honda. In Japan, they were using the masterpiece of the Japanese technology over a period of many decades. They started the operation in early 1950s, and they were doing this kind of a centralized operation to produce the motorbike. If you look at Honda, we immediately get into the impression that Honda motorbikes are good in the world. So they have taken the initiative to develop this manufacturing, centralized manufacturing system, and carefully develop the global brand and stabilized in a very sustainable manner their global brand around the world. They were really looking at a lot of other different options available, and if you look at from Asian market, many people were using the motorbikes for domestic and also for their business purposes. So in this situation, they were trying to capitalize that situation, and they have gone into those markets and developed a system or the market development to capture the large slice of market. Secondly, they were focusing on European market and also the US market. There, the people are not using because their economic status is a little bit more, and their per capita income and the chances of spending, that means a disposable income, is high. Therefore, they have the chance of using this motorbike as a purpose of going for play and doing it for some kind of a sportive activities or for the leisure services or leisure in entertainment and so on. So therefore, they develop a kind of a motorbikes for those market segments and develop a very good global brand in US and also in European region. Now let's look at the benefits of centralized operation that is followed by Honda. They could manage to develop a distribution in a very easy way because Honda had selected 200 dealers around the world and they were operating the entire show from Japan onwards. And even though they had a lot of other plants created in other countries around the world, they had their operation mainly from the Japan. So there is a very good opportunity comes towards them, easy to maintain, the high production quality. And also you know very well the difference between the centralized and decentralized operations taking place by the company for manufacturing. They could manage to eliminate all the weaknesses of these decentralized operations. One of the good local examples we can use it in Sri Lanka is Dilmah. When compared to Dilmah, their operations are centralized. Dilmah is the only international Sri Lankan brand for pure Ceylon tea, which developed a marketing philosophy of introducing the tea that was garden fresh, picked and packed at its origin. So the reason behind that is they wanted to develop originality of the Ceylon tea from Ceylon environment and stabilize in the global market. Especially they became one famous brand in Australia, and also they are very famous in certain territories in European Union countries, and they could manage to develop a Sri Lankan tea brand to the great extent. And especially when come back to the Dilmah operations were centralized, and Mr. Merrill Fernando was highly committed to the extent of developing this kind of a brand to the great extent and giving a garden fresh tea. Okay, so if you look at the Honda versus Dilmah, there is a very close similarity where the centralized operation has created a lot of benefits for these type of organizations. The centralized operation adopted by Dilmah is developed a sustainable global brand, and we need to understand that centralized operation will always give benefits to have a steady and stable growth in global market. I would like to hand over the presentation to Mr. Naushad to go ahead with that.
Thank you, gentlemen, for highlighting the difference of global strategy. Each of the global players were able to beat the competition by achieving the economies of scale. Caterpillar exploited its worldwide sales volume and its market for parts revenue. Competitors could not match its costs of profit and therefore could not make the investment necessary to catch up. In the case of Ericsson, created a cost advantage by developing a unique modular technology perfectly adapted for its segment of the market. It turned out electronics from a threat to a barrier to its competitors. In the case of Honda, used marketing of homogeneous worldwide demand and unlocked the potential for economies of scale in production, marketing and distribution. The company only refuge was the highly brand conscious specialty market. Companies in construction equipment such as Caterpillar offered large economies of scale in component manufacture. This enabled to neutralize the high cost of transport and government barriers through local assembly. Ericsson was able to gain economies of scale in software development for electronic switches. The modular technology enabled to customize for local differences and government desire to use local suppliers. Honda marketing technique raised demand in major markets with similar characteristics. This enabled to gain economies of scale in production that was coupled with low transportation costs and low tariff barriers to turn into a global player. In none of these cases, it was a world product. The global companies accommodated local differences without sacrificing the position of production costs. The global players' strength in one major market strengthened the position in others. In addition to this superior effectiveness and cost advantage in a winning global strategy requires abilities in two other dimensions. The first is in timing. The global players use a production cost or distribution advantage that makes it difficult or expensive for the competitors to respond. The second is financial. The global player commits to major investments before anyone else, whether it is technology, facilities, or distribution. If successful, it reaps the benefit of increased cash flows or to lower the costs. The longer the competition takes to respond, the higher the innovator's cash flows. A global player needs identifying against which major competitor it needs to success for broad-based success in the future. A good example is Caterpillar, located in the Far East, not only to source products locally, but to track the progress of its competitor, Komatsu. In the case of Ericsson, the radical change from technology was to avoid Siemens gaining the advantage in the smaller European and African markets. In the case of Honda, created new markets in the United States and Europe when its powerful competitor Yamaha and Kawasaki was focusing only on Japan. By exploiting the global opportunity, first the global company gains a head start before the competition starts entering the global market. How do you play the global game? Global competition will change the way top management thinks about it and operates its business. Policies and action which made sense when the company operated as multi-domestic may now not become counterproductive if they go on the same way. The most important moves will be to improve the worldwide cost competition and weaken the worldwide competitor. Look at the business from a global perspective. In the case of Siemens, when the company outgrew its West German capacity, it seized the opportunity presented by the Brazilian authorities by seeking capital investment. Siemens set up heavy electronic equipment industry in Brazil. Now Siemens has major components produced in Brazil and is the lowest cost and leading supplier in Brazil of finished products. Another move is to have solid position with your largest customer to block competition. Many businesses have a few customers that dominate the global market. A good example is British company BSR entering the Japanese market by redesigning its products to Japanese specifications. Another move by a global company is block access by key distributors or retailers. The American companies have seized the opportunity in their unwillingness to serve private label customers such as Sears and Roebuck, and as a result they couldn't gain the benefits. How to manage the business in a global company? The successful global company manages business in various countries as a single system. According to portfolio planning theory, the attractiveness and the strength of the company's position within it determines the extent the resources needs to be allocated. A company should try to defend a strong position and try to turn weak ones around. In global industry, portfolio management might not work. The global company focus instead of its ability to leverage position in one country market against those in other markets. The obvious leverage a company can obtain is the volume it contributes to the company's overall cost or effectiveness. Example, DuPont and Texas Instruments have won a large sales volume in the sophisticated Japanese market that will help to support other markets. What are the vulnerable points for a global company? Organization structure and reporting relationship represent subtle problems for a global strategy. There is no one organization structure that applies to all global organizations. Depending on the circumstances, it should vary to meet the requirements of the market. When a business becomes global, the emphasis should be to centralize. Finally, to sum up, it is clear for organizations to become global, there is no one perfect strategy. Depending on the situation, the applicable global strategy should be put into action with proper controls. Thank you very much.